What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by a special guest, Mr. Adam Lee Spencer. How's everything going today, Adam?
Hey, I'm great, brother. How things going?
It's going well. So I appreciate you jumping on to talk about the current and future landscape of the sports world. So for a quick introduction, Mr. Adam Lee Spencer is an experienced sports agent and sports business consultant and strategist. He provides his experience on sports business and consulting topics and global sporting affairs as a part of 326 Ventures. So there's a lot going on there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, give us maybe a quick summary of some of the things that you do with 326 Ventures, because your intro sounds great, and I was very intrigued by what you got going on over there.
So I run a sports management company. 326 Ventures is the consulting arm. Spencer Group International as a whole, we do sports management, athlete representation, the branding, the marketing, at all. And through 326 Ventures, we do consulting from a perspective of supporting the sports rights holder. Sports rights holder, that's a big, broad European term for what we would call just stakeholder, the
Okay.
media content rights holder, the ticketing rights holder, supporting the local city, supporting the host venue, soup to nuts within that.
Okay.
Hey, if the beverage distributor's got a question, hey, we'll support the beverage distributor too.
Okay. I like that phrase, soup to nuts. So basically, you guys do everything. So when I was reading your bio, mentioned that you had a 20-year military career and then you transitioned into sports management and business. So I'm always fascinated by folks who either do make a late in life career switch, and of course going from military to civilian life. So what made you decide to get into sports management and business versus, I don't know, something else that you were pursuing?
There's an old saying in the Army. Well, it was when I was a much younger soldier, about 15, 20 years ago now, where guys who were about to retire or, at that place in life where, hey, I'm moving on to the next thing in life, they would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was in Afghanistan. This is 2000, and I'm looking out the window. I'm in Kabul at the headquarters. I'm looking out the window, and I'm just like, man, I can't keep doing this. And then what was in my mind was, the deployments, the picking up and packing up, and then I'm somewhere else for 3 years, and then okay, in 3 years I'm picking up, packing up again, and I'm somewhere else, or I'm, trying to make things happen to stay where I want to stay. At the time it was more the deployments, but I think, at that time I had been in for 14 years, basically. And, you do anything for more than 5-6 years, it's going to wear on you. I don't care how much you love it. And so we got home back to JBLM. Some people may know it as Fort Lewis. I was stationed there at the time, and just really kind of took some time to really figure out what I wanted for the next steps. I had already signed the documentation to go in depth, so I was going to go to 20, barring injury or something wild and crazy happening. So really just sat down and looked at what I wanted in life and what I wanted to do. And one of the things I came to the conclusion is that I have to be involved in something that I'm happy. I'm just not going to be in something to be there anymore in life. And I've thought about things, but what makes me happy? Sports. And coming back from Afghanistan, this sounds crazy, but I was at the headquarters in Kabul, the NATO headquarters in Kabul. So I'd already spent a large majority of my military career abroad, most of that being in Germany anyhow. So I was used to different people from different environments in different countries. But out there, as I came back and really, reflected, I really enjoyed the experience I had meeting different folks from different countries, having to interact, having to work with them, having to negotiate to figure things out with them. And so I took that on also as something I enjoyed. So I thought about it. I thought about it a little bit more. Let's get into sports management. Did some studying with Sports Management Worldwide out of Portland. I had already had some background in negotiation and contracts, doing re-enlistment while I was in the military. So there it is. We
Okay.
here now.
Yeah, yeah. It seemed like it all kind of fit together, especially the working internationally with different folks and being able
Hmm.
to work with different types of people, different backgrounds, and things like that. So, as I said at the top of the pod, I want to talk about the kind of current and future landscape in sports, and I think the one area where we've seen the most change, the radical change, the past couple of years, has been in college sports. We've seen conference realignment. We've seen the NIL and the transfer portal. So I know that you and your company, you work a lot with college athletes. So we'll start with conference realignment.
Hmm.
How has that impacted the world of college sports in going from smaller conferences to almost these mega pro style conferences?
I think we have to look at a number of different things. College realignment has always been there. The greatest impact before 2021 with Texas and Oklahoma jumped ship finally. The greatest impact before that was probably the aftermath of SMU getting the death penalty in the late 80s. During that time period, there was a large number of schools who were still independent, like a Notre Dame that had independent status. And what was happening is a lot of schools also had what folks were enforcing what should have been enforced all along with Title IX and some of the other Olympic sports. So you look at a lot of the independent schools then had to find homes or had to find better options to ensure your Title IX and Olympic sports were getting taken care of in a much more, for lack of a better term, efficient manner.
Sure. And when you
Localized.
say yeah, when you say Olympic sports, you mean like the individual sports, swimming,
Mm-hmm.
tennis, things like that?
Yep, Title IX. They're not basically the non-revenue, more than anything, the non-revenue drivers.
Got it.
You look at it, people don't talk about this, but Penn State for years, a few years before that, had been trying to get together with what was basically the schools playing Big East basketball to form a conference and play football in the conference. If you look at the downfall of what happened to the Big East football, bringing in football and trying to hold it together, most people will tell you was pretty much the downfall of the Big East. Penn State had been trying to get a conference for a few years, right around the same time. What was then the Pac-10 had flirted with Texas before about joining
Hmm.
what was then the Pac-10 long before the early 2010s and the debacle of what ended up being the Longhorn Network, big and what became the Big 12 and holding it together, things of that nature. So when you look at it, when SMU scandal hit and the fallout hit, it was pretty much the death nail to what was the Southwest Conference. That was Baylor, Houston, Rice, TCU, Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. I think
Some
yeah,
big
I
schools.
think that was yeah. I think yeah, I do believe that was all of them. So as the conferences split, you'll know that Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Baylor all went to and Arkansas was in the Southwest Conference at that time
Hmm.
also. So those schools all went to the Big Eight and became what we know as the Big 12 now. Arkansas goes to the SEC. South Carolina comes into the SEC as an independent. The SEC produces what would be the first conference championship game, which was an outlandish shot at tradition because the conferences weren't allowed to have more than 10 teams. So when
Mm.
the SEC took on Arkansas and South Carolina, they went to 12. The revamping of schedules because you pretty much did your schedule off the conference, and hey, we go get a few out of conference, one or two out of conference games, maybe some pancakes, and that's that. Well,
Hmm.
now you had to relook. Okay, are we gonna play 8 conference games? Are we gonna play 9? What? How many conference games are gonna matter? So that happens in 9. So that's basically up to 92. All right, still very regional, but we've got a much broader landscape, and it keeps pushing to a point where everybody needs a conference championship game because you got to remember the Big Ten didn't play a conference championship game in basketball until I believe it's either the early 2000s or the late 90s.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then speaking of the Big Ten, right around that same time, you know, late, early 90s, Penn State joins the Big Ten. So you've got really the about 4 or 5 mega conferences in football, and you look at it, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Boston College, Pitt are still football independents. Florida State wants a conference, so they move to the ACC. Miami eventually joins the Big East and is, part of the story of what is the downfall of the Big East.
Yeah.
And, look, moving forward, when you look at what happened in the early 2010s, Nebraska moves to the Big Ten. The rumors of the just demise of the Big 12 start with the Pac-10 becoming the Pac-12 and really wanting to be the Pac-16. They were the ones that really wanted to go to 16 first.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, there was a big money offer from ESPN on the table, I think, that they turned down.
So part of that too was that Texas wanted the Longhorn Network when the Pac-12 already was building a television network. Now, the Pac-12 network is part of the eventual downfall of the Pac-12. But, you go back and you look at it, a lot of the moves were real estate moves because you look what the Big Ten did with Rutgers and Maryland. Those programs weren't prominent football programs. Maryland had a rich tradition in basketball, but they weren't. But it wasn't as prominent, especially then, in football. But the Big Ten wanted to be in the DC market. They wanted to be in what's considered the New York market or the tri-state market. You look at it, and so that was another shift. You look right around that same time, Texas A&M gets ticked off. Okay, we're done with Texas and Oklahoma being the big loudmouths in the conference. So they jump ship to the SEC. Missouri joins them. They were an old Big 8 member. Missouri joins them, so the SEC goes to 14 and becomes the power conference in football.
Mm-hmm. And they get the divisions there as well, right? They have the SEC East and West.
Exactly. And so during that time period, everybody wanted to go to divisions. When the Pac-10 became the Pac-12, they split up into divisions: a northern division and a southern division, with their expansion realignment bringing in Utah and Colorado. Utah is probably the program that's made the most out of expansion, out of realignment and expansion. If you look at from what they were to what they are now, they're probably the program that's made the most out of it. And there's all when you look at, especially when it comes to the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, there's also academic reasons. Can't everybody just go join the Big Ten? Just like couldn't everybody just go join the Pac-12 at the time? You had to meet California State University regulations. That's Tier 1 research.
Oh wow!
Being a member of the being a member of the AAU, it's the All American Academic Union or Academic Union of Universities, something like that. With the Big Ten, you had to meet the requirements of the BTA, the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So there's still a number of schools out there that meet that requirement, but the Big Ten now gets to pick and choose the schools they want. Like the rumor is now they want UVA and UNC, which is really interesting. And growing up in Virginia, that's something I thought I would never see. The Big Ten wanting UVA? Really?
It sounds like another real estate play.
Real estate in television, because if you look at Fox, what's their Florida footprint?
They don't do the SEC, right? So they just have do they even have the ACC, or is that ESPN?
ESPN has the ACC.
So they don't really have one then.
It's UCF in the Big 12 now. Okay, now with realignment, now look at ESPN. What's their big West Coast package right now?
Well, they don't really have the Pac-12 anymore. It doesn't exist in the same way, right?
So, okay, I'm sure because of Washington State and Oregon State loosely aligning with the Mountain West Conference, they'll have their games. But ESPN's major West Coast package right now is the Four Corner schools and throw in BYU because of the Big 12. So Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, and BYU. Okay, and some of the Mountain West and West Coast Conference teams, like, okay, San Diego State, UNLV.
So some
When,
lower tier
yeah,
teams, basically.
yeah, when look at what Fox has now for West Coast pack.
USC, UCLA, well, maybe not Stanford, but is it Stanford and Cal too?
Stanford and Cal on the ACC package, but are they what Stanford and Cal were maybe in 2010, or a
Absolutely
Cal
not.
team from the mid 2000s?
Definitely
So
not.
you look at it, the TV and the media content providers, put it that way, are also involved now because they're in a fight. Because if the Big Ten gets its way and gets Florida State now, that's a footprint for Fox in the Florida market that isn't UCF
So it sounds
or the
like,
random.
yeah, so it sounds like the television, the TV companies, the cable companies, they're the ones that are driving this in a competition for eyes, for attention, for ratings, because live sports is still king. So, I mean, it's kind of the professionalization of college sports. And then you throw
Right.
in the NIL and the transfer portal. How does that mix into all this? And, what kind of concoction is being cooked up right now by these college conferences and the television network?
Well, you see the concoction exploding right in front of our faces, pretty much. And it's happened because it all came together at once, pretty much. You get the Supreme Court decision basically saying, hey, yeah, NIL is legal and constitutionalized, and the transfer portal was locked in right around the same time. So that was what, late 2020, mid to late 2020, 2021. Texas and Oklahoma jumped ship. Bam, here you go.
Right away.
And here we go. And here we go. It didn't take much. You look at it, and then the scramble that the Big 12 did to keep itself alive played a part in it too, because you had some, I guess, mid-major schools now get very high public profiles, because if we're telling the truth with what BYU's program had done in the past, why weren't they in the Pac-12 or the Pac-10, Pac whatever you want to call it, long time ago? Stanford and Cal, especially the California schools, didn't want to deal with with the religion that comes with BYU. They were a perfect fit for the Big 12, though. When you look at Big 12, already had Baylor, already had TCU.
Those are both Jesuit schools, right?
Baylor is I don't want to say Jesuit, but
it's a private Christian
the
school.
Origins of their private Christian school,
yeah,
very much.
That.
TCU, Texas Christian University.
I think if you ask 100 sports fans what does TCU stand for, they'll say Texas Central University or something. I don't think they know what the C stands for.
Right. Wouldn't know that it was in Fort Worth, that close to Dallas, just like SMU is right in the middle of Dallas, Southern Methodist University, another private Christian university. So BYU pretty much has, in the end, aligned much more with the schools that were in the Big 12 than what should have been right there for them in the Pac-12, especially with the history of that football program.
Yeah, I never thought of the cultural lines or the cultural connections between the schools being a reason for either going for realignment or going against realignment. So that's a really interesting angle. So as part of your work, you on your website you talk a lot about NIL and helping athletes take advantage of that and this new sports world. So what kind of work do you guys do to help athletes capitalize on the short window that they have in college with NIL?
Well, I think, so I don't give away all my little secrets. They ain't much, but what I try and do is have you tell me what your brand is. Tell me who you want to be, where you want to go in life. And I do that because you look at the game of agents and the agencies, you'll see a lot of them that, or at least try and be, bigger than the athlete himself. I believe in my work. I believe in what I can and what I can't, and I know what I can't do. But I'm not bigger than the athlete. I understand that. Love it, but I'm trying to get a few nickels out of this. I'm not going to make anything if you aren't healthy, safe, sane, and on the court, pitch, or whatever your sport of choice is, performing. I'm not going to get anything out of it. So what I try and do is, when it's time for us to talk about what you want, figure out what makes you happy, figure out the direction you want to go in life, and then I'll go from there. Because
Okay.
as I said, if you're not on the field, if you're not performing, none of us are gonna make anything out of it. I don't
Okay.
care what kind of package we put together.
Hmm.
I don't care how I don't brand and market and sell anything. If you're not on the field, if you're not performing, and if you're not happy doing it, none of us are gonna be able to do anything.
So it's athletes first. Makes sense. Makes sense. So
Yeah.
we talked about the big changes in college sports with realignment and transfer portal and all that. And I think the other thing that have rocked the sports world in the past 5 years, of course, was the COVID-19 pandemic, and it forced
Hmm.
sports and the sports world, entertainment, to rethink a lot about how they do business. So what have
Hmm.
they learned from, that, what is it, a year, 18-month period with no fans and all that? And how have they adapted from, all the lessons that they've learned during that time?
Well, I think when you look at the NBA, the one thing that happened was scoring went up, and it happened instantaneously. Go back and look at the game before the bubble and look at how scoring jumps and the shooting all of a sudden just gets better in the bubble. It's one thing that people don't talk about is how much more the game improved offensively once they went to the bubble. I don't know, it was because there was no other distractions, whatever it was, the NBA game from a scoring perspective got better from the
Mhm.
time they hit the bubble.
I mean, I'm on record on saying that there was something weird in there. Whether I think it was no fans, the depth perception, nobody under the basket, all that all these shooting percentages went up and the scoring went up, and you had guys like almost routinely scoring 50 points in a playoff game. So I'm on that same wavelength as you for sure. There's something weird going on down there.
Well, I think it was just focus. There was nothing else to, okay, in my life, check to see if I'm sick. Did I eat? Did I find my guys to laugh and joke? All right, now let's go rinse and repeat. That was it. That was the bubble. I think one of the things that also happened was every league had to reevaluate or evaluate its business model. The NBA lost about I guess 5 or 6 billion, and so if you remember, the pandemic happens in 2021. The rumors start about NBA expanding, and one of the first
True.
things that
Yeah.
came out was, okay, I live in Sydney, right across the water from Seattle. So obviously Seattle came up in Vegas, with the NBA expansion. Not long after that, expansion numbers came up, like 2.5 billion for a team. Well, it came out later that supposedly the 2.5 billion per team would have covered the COVID losses. Okay, so there's that.
Hmm.
One of the things that also came out was that teams like Golden State, the Knicks, Lakers, Miami, they stabilized during the bubble. They didn't lose money. Teams in higher income bracket, I think higher income bracket cities, they broke even. Worst case scenario during the bubble. While it was the teams, unfortunately Midwestern and Southern markets, the less popularized markets, they were the ones that took a hit during the bubble. And a lot of that for me goes to, which is a whole nother conversation, the RSNs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the RSNs have been a challenge all along because, especially with sports like baseball and basketball, because if you truly look at it, we all know that they don't do the same revenue sharing that the NFL does, where everybody's getting the same thing. You look at it with those RSNs, that was your own pot of money that you didn't have to share with. Okay, I'm Mark Cuban in Dallas. I don't have to share that with the folks in Atlanta. That was my own pot of money. And so what happened with those RSNs is they shaped the strength of the leagues. If you look at it, in baseball and basketball, especially, the strengths of the league, the best teams in the league are along the lines of East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a financial perspective, the more financially viable team, they're along East Coast. Standings wise, most of the better teams are along East Coast. And so you look at it now with the come to Jesus that folks are starting to have with the RSNs. Will the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and some of the other sports that pretty much survive off the RSN money, will they have to go to the NFL model? Because when you look at it, I believe it was Amazon that's already got in on Bally Sports. What was Bally Sports?
Mm-hmm.
That the
Which I
old
think was
Fox.
mostly in the South, right? The southern.
It was the Midwest. It was those old Fox RSNs in the Midwest and the South. I think there was one. I think the Arizona teams. So Phoenix in basketball and the Diamondbacks in baseball and the hockey team. Also, that was another region they got caught up in. Phoenix is a pretty big market, but they were ones that, in fact, the baseball team and the basketball team just cut ties with Diamond Valley Sports and went back to the local OTA over the air station. Pretty much.
Yeah, I did hear that with the new ownership in Phoenix. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
future? Do you think that's the future? Is that I know some teams, I think at least the Knicks have their own network. They have the MSG network. I think the Lakers are only on the Spectrum channel. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
only the Spectrum cable network or whatever it is. Is the future just going back to over the air so you're able to kind of combat the cable cutting and still being on the streaming services as well, like YouTube TV and all these other ones?
Well, if you look at what some of the well, I think to answer that, you have to look at some of the TV mergers that are potentially there. With Warner and Paramount, which is CBS, working to go in together. All right. And then you've had this idea of a fused streaming channel of the Fox, ESPN, and the Warner Brothers, which if they merge with Paramount, it'll give you the CBS stuff also. So that's there. Apple and Amazon obviously want a piece. You'll have to also look at with YouTube getting the
The Sunday
the
ticket. Yeah.
NFL Sunday ticket package. Okay, they also have to do an evaluation. Okay, how comfortable are we with the Sunday package now, and do we want to move forward into something else? Because, like I said, because of the conversation we were just having about those RSNs, the sustainability of the ones on the coast, it's the ones in the Midwest, the ones in service in the South, they're going to struggle. So I think you'll see Amazon and Apple get some of it. I think ESPN is sitting in the catbird seat because they've done. I feel like they've done the best overall between obviously having the cable products and the streaming products,
Mm-hmm.
and then their relationship with Disney, ABC gives them the over-the-air channel. So
True,
I
true.
think they're going to sit in the catbird seat. I think what you're going to see is you've heard talk of somebody, maybe it's ESPN, buying the rights deal and then subleasing it off to Fox. Subleasing, a part of their deal off of,
Wow.
let's say, Fox for this. Or ESPN and TNT getting the basketball deal again, and they'll sublease part of it over to Apple or Amazon. I think Apple and Amazon are going to be major players. I think ESPN is going to sit the catbird seat. And Fox is really going to have to evaluate what the product they're providing, because this is just my dumb opinion, but I think Fox is excellent with a major event, World Cup
Yeah, for
final,
sure.
Major League All-Star game, Super Bowl. They are excellent. Now, I think where their challenge is regular season stuff. They still
I think
haven't
that's a great
provided
point.
They still haven't put together a sustainable streaming product, and
Hmm.
that's another thing that's going to guide what happens is who can continue to develop streaming. Because you look at it, Netflix just got the WWE Raw. They just
I think they
got
have tennis too,
inside
right?
the I think they're doing a documentary with tennis or something. They just got inside the NFL. So you could see them becoming a player too, because if nothing else, they've got streaming on lock. And see, that's one of the real challenges of sports media content is being able to develop a streaming program. If you look at what MLS did with Apple, okay, yeah, they got the 250 million or whatever it was a year, but they're having to develop their own product. So that means their own broadcasters, their own studios, their own technical folks. That was one of the big failures of the Pac-12 network, and part of the downfall of the Pac-12. If you go back, the Big Ten network had been there a little longer, but the Big Ten network always had been attached to Fox. Pac-12 network never attached to a major station.
No, I always assumed they were part of ESPN, but I guess that's the Longhorn Network, right? That's part of ESPN.
Yeah, the Longhorn network was part of ESPN. And if you look at it, every other major conference, yeah, they got a television network, but but the Big Ten was attached to Fox. The other ones were attached to ESPN. The Pac-12 was a standalone entity. So they were doing everything on their own, and they stuck the headquarters in, of all places, San Francisco.
Not
One of
exactly
the
a
most,
college sports hotbed.
well, I think more than that, the cost of functioning and operating in San Francisco was, a large portion of the issue. And you can also say, yeah, it's Stanford and Cal, academic elites who can play, who can play sports from time to time. That wasn't helpful either. Not utilizing Los Angeles, with obviously another expensive place to live, but not utilizing Los Angeles and not having an attachment to a network was kind of the roots of them finally falling apart.
So it sounds like, I mean, unfortunately, I think it sounds like the future is streaming, and we've seen that every single network, every single company is taking this. There's a big live sports pie, and every company is taking their share, their slice. Whether it's Apple with MLS, Amazon with Thursday Night Football, maybe some other primetime game. We've seen the other networks, NBC, Warner, they're taking international soccer, whether it's Premier League or the Champions League. It's interesting that you talked about Fox, because growing up watching international soccer and the Premier League, it was all on Fox. It was all on the Fox Soccer channel, and then now it's not anymore, and they don't really have their international footprint, but they do have the tournaments. They have the Gold Cup, the World Cup, that sort of thing. So, it's unfortunate because it sounds like everybody's going to have to just sign up for all these streaming sites, just like we used to sign up for cable.
Well, the streaming is going to be, because I do work in soccer too, and we'll be hopefully be registered to do it, to get back to doing what I was doing in summer. The interesting thing about soccer that you bring up, because I grew up watching it on cable on RSNs. It was on home team. I grew up in Virginia, so we got home team. We had home team sports at the time, which if you know the area now, that's the Masson footprint. So what they would show was the highlights on Sundays. They would show the highlights of the Premier League, and they would show the highlights of the Italian League. Every once in a while, you would get a full midweek game or a full game on Sunday. So with international soccer, the international leagues of soccer, put it this way: the top 5 leagues in Europe's top 5, it's always been on an RSN. So that going to streaming, or you look at what NBC has done with the Premier League, where the majority of the games are on USA or Peacock. You might get a big game Sunday, or for here on the West Coast, a midday game on NBC every once in a while. But it sort of fits the niche. You look at the Champions League. CBS now has just started to show knockout phase games on big CBS now during the week.
It's a big deal.
You know, yeah, that's a big deal. I think you look at the game of soccer in the U.S. streaming, the streaming packages, and kind of like something like a USA or a CBS Sports. That's still going to be. I think that's still going to be soccer's wheelhouse. But Liverpool and City for the title, that NBC will have that game. The Klassiker in the Bundesliga, Dortmund and Bayern, okay, ESPN will have that. ESPN2 will get that game. Or the Classico in La Liga, ESPN2, they'll put that game on. But for the most part, I do believe streaming and, an ESPN2 or USA, CBS Sports, that's going to be soccer's niche in this country.
Yeah. It's a smart model, right? It's like we'll give you a taste of the best on the big networks, NBC, CBS, whatever. But if you want more, if you want to see Real Madrid against, Villarreal or something like that, like if you really like this team, you got to pay up. Whether it's Premier League, you got to at ESPN Plus, Peacock, Paramount Plus, whatever, to watch the Champions League. So it's smart. We're going to reel people in with these big games, and then if you want more, you got to pay up. So I think we've talked enough about the streaming world and the sports on TV or on our devices. So one thing you mentioned was you guys work a lot with these big time events that are coming up. And I think there's a lot of events coming up in the next 2 years in the US, whether it's this summer with the Copa America, the World Cup, Olympics in 2028. So what are some of the biggest challenges that face, these events face, and what role do you guys play in helping facilitate these big time events?
So we plan to be in Lausanne at the IOC with our partners, MEI Major Events International, out of London, to meet up with stakeholders from different events in the summer. When you look at those major events, I always break them down into 3 portions. There's a pre, an execution, and a post. The post execution of these events are becoming more and more important. The actions that you take, the people that you get involved in the planning and the run up to the event will get you in trouble.
Expand on that, please. I'm really curious.
So since pretty much, I'll say the 2000 Summer Olympics, that was Sydney, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
04 was Greece, it was Athens, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So pick one, whatever you want to choose. After just about every event now, you had some sort of documentary, whether it was on CBS, 60 Minutes, what have you, exploitation of local employees, exploitation of third nation employees, global, federal, local investigations into bribery to get the event has happened. And the pace of the documentaries coming out about everything that's happening and picking up. You look at the 2006 World Cup in Germany. That was supposed to go to South Africa.
Yeah, I recall.
And people couldn't understand, well, how did Germany get it? Well, I think it came out during the tournament. Bribery scandal. So those things now are going to get people in trouble. The post-execution actions are going to make you look like a social failure. Look at the 2-year period between 2014 and 2016 in Brazil. World Cup, Olympics. By 2017, they were having conversations about soccer stadiums in, of all places, Brazil, empty, unused, with ivy and moss growing throughout the stadium in Brazil. So you have to have a plan for what happens to these facilities after the event. London 2012 protected itself pretty well. They used a lot of the facilities that were housing athletes, the different logistic areas, things of that nature, turned it into housing to get people housed. They did a pretty good job with that. And your governing bodies now are going to have really having to take a look at who they're giving the bids to, because of a lot of what happened since the mid 90s pretty much is they went to try to expand the reach and the growth of these different games. So they went to countries in Europe that were behind the wall 10 years ago. They went to countries that were considered
Developing.
economically underserved.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very good term. Economically developing, blinded to the fact that they had a little wannabe dictator in charge of the country. So that was a propaganda. So when you gave them that event, no matter the event, that was a propaganda ad for that leader. Look at
Yeah,
2018
absolutely.
in Russia, 2018 World Cup in Russia, and look now. So you have those three basic things coming together now: the choice of the host nation or host city, the pre-planning process of, okay, do we have enough facility of getting facilities built, getting logistics in order, having, transportation options in order. Okay, once all that's done, okay, you have the post execution issues of, okay, what are we going to do with all of these facilities? Because as I said earlier, these governing bodies tried to go expand the markets, expand, their reach and quote unquote bring the game to different places. But you also made a quick propaganda ad for a dictator. You've put the game in places that couldn't economically sustain itself post execution or didn't have a plan post execution. So those are the things that they're going to have that a lot of these governing bodies, as I said, are going to have to start thinking about.
Okay. So it's like sustainability, transparency, accountability are the three things that
Exactly.
are the big things.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you guys help in that regard, or what do you do to help in that?
So we'll work with host nations in the planning process. A lot of the focuses I'll start with is the post execution process. What are you going to do with these facilities after everybody's left? Then I'm going to ask, okay, how many facilities or what needs to be built, and what is your plan to do that? Don't become a documentary in 2 years. Hell, don't become a Twitter thread, because you might be a Twitter thread. The way information moves nowadays, don't become a Twitter thread, and we haven't even kicked the ball yet, or we haven't even ran a race yet. Don't become a Twitter thread. Be very careful about how you're hiring. Be careful of how you're distributing the jobs out. Be transparent about how the money is being distributed out. Because as I said, you don't want to be a documentary in 2 years. You don't want to be a Twitter thread before you even play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the basics of what I try and have conversations about. And then, and as I said earlier, after you've executed, what is your plan for the facilities? Because let's just say it's a winter sports event. Okay, you have the event in January, February timeframe. Come March, snow season's over with. You look at a lot of those winter sports, especially the outdoor ones that involve snow. You've got a very short time to make the most of the facilities, because a lot of times when you look at it, the real snow season is maybe a 2 month period between December, 2 to 3 month period between December, late February, early March, and then spring's coming. So if I basically got maybe a 2 to 3 month, if we're pushing it, depending on where it is, a 4 month period of utilizing being able to utilize the facilities properly. What's my plan from March to October again? That's 8 to 9 months of you basically can't use the facilities for the purposes of this event. Again, what is your plan? Or how do I utilize the facility for that 8 month period? Or is it just gonna sit there? I was stationed in Germany. We were off in Iraq at the time, but I was stationed in Germany for the 06 World Cup. The World Cup started in June. I took leave 2 weeks of R&R in May, and I went back. They had all their touristy walkable area facilities up and ready to go. They had museums, they had stops where you could take pictures, different information, just different historical sites. All of it was set up. Those things are still in place, and here it is, 2024. Man, Jesus, they're about to use them again for Euro 2024 here this summer. You look at the stadiums, okay. Maybe there's been a few new stadiums built, but most of them, hey, some paint, clean up this, expand your internet access, and we're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Not every country, most countries don't have that in place. That's why the U.S. is always a viable, you name it, city. The U.S. is always a viable option for these international events because 9 times out of 10, especially something like the Olympics, 9 times out of 10, or the World Cup, something like that, 9 times out of 10, it's paint the stadium. Can we get these potholes cleaned up?
Can we go from turf to grass?
Right. Can we go from turf? Exactly. Can we go from turf? What's it going to take to get grass in, get it settled so nobody's slipping like all over the field, like in Vegas was an issue with football.
Folks the Super Bowl, I think it was Arizona when it was Chiefs Eagles was the big one,
Yeah, and people couldn't keep their feet because they didn't allow the grass, the grass to set properly in time, and so it was in good shape for the event. But like I was saying, we're just fixing a couple of roads. Okay, we're already changing transportation, adding to transportation options, and new PA system here, new press box there, some paint here. Make sure the internet works there, and we're good to go. You go to a smaller nation like the Europeans just did their U21 European Championships in Georgia. That was last year, I believe it was. That was last year. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they built 2 or 3 new stadiums for U20 European Championships. It's a major tournament in the world of soccer, but a developing country as such just put that kind of money into 2 or 3 more stadiums.
That won't really get used after the fact. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of the heavy lifting that, you probably don't think about when you're, caught up in the excitement of a new event and putting things on. You're not really thinking about how are we going to clean up this, not mess, but how are we going to get things back to normal? How are we going to make sure that all this money that we spent isn't just for this event and there's some sustainability and benefits to the population. So this was great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you spending some time with us here on the podcast.
No problem.
And, teaching us about the work that you do and the current landscape of sports and all that. So where can folks find out more about you and the work that you do?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Just type in Spencer Group International. You'll find me.
All right. One last question before I let you go. Are you guys hiring?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm not gonna sit here and tell folks lies that we are. Nah, we not there yet. But in January, we had some things going on, and I had to really reevaluate, what I was doing. So we had to reset, how we were doing things, making sure we were given ample time to each thing. So we coming out of that reset process kind of. So we're targeting summer to be full steam ahead running.
All right. I was half joking, but I mean, what you guys do sounds so interesting and exciting. So yeah, I was half joking there, but I appreciate it. And I appreciate you.
No problem, brother. No problem at all.